In the run-up to the elections, one of the biggest talking points for our current Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, and the TISA party overall was corruption. That they were going to stamp down on corruption, on cronyism, specifically on the misuse of public state funds. Now, in order to do that, they actually set up an office. It is called the National Asset Recovery and Asset Protection Office. This is going to have many powers. It's going to be able to run ex officio. It doesn't require any judicial oversight, and we will have overreaching powers that myself included believe is too much, to effectively go in on a whim, take information, search premises, rifle through people's lives, people whom they suspect of doing bad things with state funds. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the protection of state funds. People who misuse state funds, they should go to jail. So there's nothing about that there. However, so they ran in the run-up to the elections, and they mentioned this a lot, that they're going to be stamping down on this. And then they set up this body. A few days ago, they put out on a website, effectively, job listings for 5 people. So not only for the head, but also for 4 deputies. They have continued to say that they have no candidate in mind, and this is something I just don't believe. And honestly, I hope that isn't true, because for a body with such power, they must have someone in mind. I hope we're not going to go through the same ludicrous process that we went through with the president, where they picked one, then they picked another one, and then they picked another one, and then the one they finally got, they said was the best, even though he wasn't option one. István Hontosi, who is the TISA party chair of Parliament's Justice and Constitutional Committee, he told Telex that there is no pre-selected person for the post of president. I don't believe him. And that Prime Minister Peter Magyar has no veto power over the choice. I also don't believe him, because Peter Magyar maybe doesn't have, on paper, veto power, but we've seen before that if he puts out a little Facebook post that says, I don't like him, or don't believe the news that this person is going to be the head, then suddenly that person is not going to be the head. He said applications for the president and the 4 vice president positions will close this Sunday. So effectively, for one of these really important jobs, they've given themselves 6 days to find a candidate, that's just not enough. Hontosi would not disclose how many applications have already arrived, saying only that there has been significant interest, but that the strict conditions make numbers hard to quantify. I don't understand how that makes sense. For the top job itself, the candidate need not be a prosecutor, but must meet the formal requirements for becoming one, and must hold a relevant degree, namely one in either law, economics, public administration, political science, that's not a degree, or another social science, whatever, as well as having some practical experience. Hontosi stressed that the office's powers closely resemble those of the prosecution service, so high professional and integrity standards were deliberately set, excluding people with recent political pasts, so people with Fidesz, intended to remove any suspicion of bias. He said the committee has no safe candidates and wants to break with a habit of simply deciding in advance who should win. Yeah, the fact that he said that makes me not nervous, but makes me think that they have candidates in mind, and they should do, honestly, they should do. He would also regard it as unfortunate if someone close to the party were chosen. Parliamentary groups may each nominate 1 additional person for interview, but we know, of course, that any candidate that Mihozank puts forward is going to be thrown out the window. Any candidate that the Christian Democrats put forward will be thrown out the window, and any candidate the Fidesz puts forward will also be thrown out the window. The committee will then propose 1 person per post to the full parliament, which is expected to decide by secret ballot at the end of August. Hontosi acknowledged, though, that the TISA 2/3 majority allows decisions without opposition agreement, but said the committee still offers opposition parties the chance to nominate candidates who will be ignored. He described the large majority as a responsibility rather than a blank check, so that's very Spider-Man of him. And on the Constitutional Court challenge brought by Fidesz and the Christian Democrats against recent constitutional and EU fund-related legislation, he expressed confidence that the laws will survive constitutional review. I will be very interested to see who is chosen for this position. Obviously, they're going to want to choose someone who is a pit bull. He's going to have to be I'm guessing, a high-powered lawyer, but it's a very, very important job. And this person, and these people, excuse me, not only do they get a huge salary, they have a huge responsibility, they also, wait for it, they get immunity. And that is rather disturbing, because immunity means you can act any way you want to, and you can act with arrogance, because nothing is ever going to blow back on you. Turning to the arts are always a big topic, mainly I think because Hungarians, the electorate, the people, we know the names of the people involved, actors, directors and so on. The current head of, well, still the head of the Hungarian art scene overall is a director called Vidnyansky. He's a slightly fat guy, and he took over the arts underneath Fidesz. He was the head of the National Theatre, or is the head of the National Theatre. Now today he is in a meeting, actually, as I'm recording this video, to discuss his future, because his contract expires at some point. Now if he gets fired, then they have to pay him a year's salary. Vidnyansky is a figure that basically the typical left-leaning liberal artist, actor, director absolutely hates, because he doesn't share their worldview and doesn't share their political stance either. In fact, when Vidnyansky became the head, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Up until now it was all you, and now it's our turn." He's famous for being, of course, a pro-Hungarian patriot. He was very unhappy, and he's made it publicly known that he doesn't like, and never did like, a number of performances which effectively shit on Hungarian history. He doesn't like the attitude that most Hungarian artists have of, oh my god, this country sucks, everywhere else is great, which is the typical conversation you will hear if you ever go to a theatre bar after a performance. And actually, in a quote, he said that before we turned up, there was a performance when actors would be pissing on the Hungarian map, and even a performance when some dude was masturbating on stage. And he sort of leveled this in some way against another big name in the Hungarian arts, a man called Robert Alföldi, who's this, I don't know, he's an unpleasant guy. He's gay, that's not what makes him unpleasant, but he's one of those gays that really doesn't like women. And I know far too many people who have been in rehearsals with him, and he has gone out of his way to humiliate them. He's the sort of director who enjoys his power and enjoys getting the actors and actresses underneath him to do whatever they want, because effectively they're his dogs. But Alföldi basically came out, and today he's in the press saying that, no, this is ridiculous, there was never anything like that, because I think the masturbation claim was aimed directly at Robert Alföldi. So anyway, Vidnyansky, no doubt, is going to be out. Maybe he won't be kicked out today, because that would mean paying him a lot of money. But he'll be gone at some point, and then the Hungarian arts will revert to how they used to be and how they've been for 40 years or 35 years, with the exception of the last 10 or 12, let's say. I'm neither here nor there on the topic. I find Hungarian theatre by and large very stale. I'm not sure how this is going to affect the Hungarian art scene moving forwards. I think it just means we're going to revert to the norm, and the norm is the sort of Hungarian theatre that we've had since the 1970s all the way through till 2010. So left-leaning, left-wing, with the normal sort of performances that we've seen everywhere. So lots of Chekhov, lots and lots of Chekhov. Although actually, to tell you the truth, Hungarian performances of Chekhov are pretty good. That's all for now. If you like my stuff, give me a like, give me a share.